Most people lose before the game even begins, and they don't even realize it. They talk too much, explain too much, show too much. They believe that being transparent all the time is a sign of strength, when in reality, it only reveals one thing: a lack of strategy. And here is the truth that few have the courage to accept. In the real world, those who expose everything lose control. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He knew that power lies not in convincing others with beautiful words, but in controlling what is revealed, and especially what is hidden. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals. It's not about seeming good, it's about playing better. Now think about it. How many times have you said something and then realized you gave away more than you should have? How many times have you tried to over-explain yourself and ended up weakening yourself? This isn't a coincidence, it's the norm. Because those who don't control their own communication are controlled by it, and the modern world has made this worse. Today, everyone wants to be seen, heard, validated, but while most chase attention, few realize that true power lies in silence, in mystery, in what is left unsaid. The end justifies the means, including learning to be silent when everyone expects you to speak. And that's exactly what you're going to understand here: how to use silence as a weapon. How to stop exposing yourself without realizing it. How to transform every word into a strategy and not a weakness. Because in the end, whoever masters the game doesn't reveal their cards. They observe, they wait, and when they decide to act, they're already several moves ahead. And maybe, just maybe, what you've always called communication has never been real power. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul. An invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now. Not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. He realized something most people completely ignore. Those who talk too much reveal more than they should. In the real game of life, the one he described so well based on Machiavelli, silence is not absence. It's pure strategy. While many believe they need to explain themselves, justify themselves, or prove their worth all the time, the most intelligent do the opposite. They observe, analyze, and only speak when each word has weight. There's a brutal difference between communication and exposure, and those who understand this begin to operate on another level. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows that the world doesn't reward those who speak beautifully, but those who play intelligently. Have you noticed how, in a conversation, those who speak less tend to seem more confident? It's not a coincidence. It's control. It's calculation. It's the kind of behavior that creates authority effortlessly. Silence, when used well, is not weakness. It's the beginning of dominance. And here's where something even deeper comes in. Silence creates discomfort, and discomfort reveals the truth. When someone doesn't fill the void with words, the other person begins to expose themselves without realizing it. It's almost automatic. The person talks more, tries to justify themselves, gets tangled up, and that's it. They've given away the whole game. This is virtù and fortuna in action, skill combined with opportunity. A simple example. In a negotiation, whoever feels the need to speak first is usually more anxious, more pressured, and without realizing it, has already ceded power. Now, think of a real scenario. Someone makes you an offer. Instead of responding immediately, you remain silent for a few seconds. It seems like a small thing, but this small gesture completely changes the dynamic. The other person begins to fill that space, often improving the offer or revealing insecurity. This is the calculated use of force. It's not about acting all the time, but acting at the right moment. But the most interesting thing is that silence also protects. In a world where everyone wants to show everything, opinions, plans, achievements, those who maintain discretion build an invisible advantage. Machiavelli already warned about the importance of the appearance of virtue. Not everything you are needs to be shown. Not everything you think needs to be said. Those who reveal too much lose the element of surprise. Those who keep quiet control the game. And here comes a brutal principle. The end justifies the means, including knowing when to say nothing. It's not about being cold or distant, but about being strategic, about understanding that every word has a cost, and that often avoiding being hated also involves knowing when to be silent in critical moments. Ultimately, mastering silence is the first step to mastering perception, and whoever controls perception begins to control something much greater. But that already touches on the next point. He observed in silence. And that's precisely what made Niccolo Machiavelli so dangerous in the strategic sense of the word. While others wrote about how the world should be, he analyzed how it actually worked. And what he perceived is uncomfortable for many. The most powerful leaders are not those who speak the most eloquently, but those who speak the least and conceal the most. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that power lies not in exaggerated eloquence, but in precision. Those who master the game don't waste words. They use silence as a filter. Every sentence has intention. Every pause has meaning. And this isn't distant theory. It's pure practice. Look at any strong leader in any field. They are rarely explaining everything, justifying themselves all the time. On the contrary, they observe more than they reveal. Machiavelli also understood something that few accept. Revealing too much means losing control. He saw this in courts, in wars, in political alliances, and today it is repeated in meetings, business deals, social media. The logic is the same, only the scenario has changed. The concept of better to be feared than loved speaks not only of direct fear, but of strategic respect, and silence contributes greatly to this. Those who speak little generate uncertainty, and uncertainty generates caution in others. A practical example. Imagine two leaders. One speaks everything, shares everything, takes a stand all the time. The other is more reserved, speaks only when necessary. Which one do you think generates more curiosity, more attention, more care around them? Exactly. The second one, because he controls the flow of information. This is constant adaptability, knowing when to act, when to speak, and above all, when to do neither. And there's a detail that separates amateurs from real players. Silence isn't inaction, it's preparation. While many are busy trying to appear intelligent, those who understand Machiavelli are collecting data, reading the environment, perceiving patterns. They don't need to react immediately because they're always a few steps ahead. This connects directly to decisions based on real human nature, understanding that people are predictable when pressured, and that silence is one of the most effective ways to generate that pressure. And here's something almost no one does: consciously testing silence. In important conversations, responding less than expected. In conflicts, not reacting immediately. In negotiations, letting the other person fill the space. It seems simple, but few have the self-control for it. And that's precisely where the game starts to change, because when you speak less, you begin to see more, and seeing more inevitably leads you to perceive something even more powerful: the difference between what people show and what they really are. He began to realize that the world doesn't react to what you are, but to what you appear to be, and that completely changes the way you play the game. Most people live trying to prove their essence, to show authenticity all the time, as if the world would automatically reward that. But Machiavelli already made it clear, the appearance of virtue is often worth more than virtue itself, not because character doesn't matter, but because, in the social game, perception is power. And silence comes in exactly here, as a surgical tool. When you speak less, you control more of what others interpret about you. You leave gaps. And these gaps are filled by the mind of the observer. And the human mind, almost always, fills them with projections. This is pure psychological game, politics guided by reality, not by ideals. It's not about being false. It's about being strategic in how you reveal yourself. Now think about this practically. Someone who talks too much tends to contradict themselves, expose themselves, and show insecurities without realizing it. Someone who speaks little, on the other hand, maintains a more solid line. They choose what to show. They edit their own image in real time. This creates something very powerful, perceived consistency. And consistency generates trust, or even silent respect. This is where another strong principle comes in: avoid being hated. Because when you talk too much, you inevitably tread on more ground, generate more friction, and expose more opinions that can be used against you. Silence filters all of that. It reduces noise. It creates a more controlled presence. A simple example. In a group, the person who doesn't comment on everything, but when they speak, gets it right. That person becomes a reference, not because of volume, but because of precision. This is virtu and fortuna in action again. The ability to choose the right moment combined with the impact of execution. But the most profound point is this: when you control your image, you start to control the game. Because people don't deal with you directly. They deal with the idea they've created about you, and if you don't control that, someone else will control it for you. Silence gives you that space to build. It prevents you from giving everything away impulsively. It creates strategic room, and here comes a thought that few confront head-on. The end justifies the means, including in managing one's own image. Not in a cheap, manipulative sense, but in the sense of survival and advantage in competitive environments. Those who understand this start to play differently. They start to speak less, observe more, and consciously shape their presence. And it's at this point that something curious happens. When you stop exposing yourself so much, others start to expose themselves for you. And that opens the door to the next level of the game. He began to notice an almost inevitable pattern. Few people can tolerate silence. There's an almost automatic impulse to fill the void, to speak, to justify, to explain, as if silence were a mistake to be corrected. And that's precisely where the advantage lies. Whoever masters silence creates an environment where the other person surrenders without realizing it. This isn't cheap manipulation. It's a profound understanding of human nature. Machiavelli already operated with this, observing that people, when pressured, reveal more than they would like. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals. Silence generates this invisible pressure. It makes the other person think, I need to say something. And when that need arises, control of the conversation has already changed hands. Now look at this in practice. Someone asks you a question expecting a quick answer. Instead, you pause. You maintain eye contact. You don't react immediately. It seems simple, but this small gesture changes everything. The other person begins to adjust, perhaps rephrases the question, perhaps explains it better, and often reveals information that wasn't in the original plan. This is calculated use of force in its most subtle form. You don't need to attack, pressure, or argue. Just don't react. Another classic example. In negotiations, Whoever speaks first usually reveals their position, their limits, their urgency. Those who remain silent observe, gather data, and decide with an advantage. This is virtù and fortuna operating again, the ability to wait for the right moment and seize it when it arrives. And here's a point that completely separates those who play seriously from those who are still in impulsive mode. Silence requires emotional control. Because, let's be honest, you want to talk. You want to fill the space, to seem intelligent, to show value. But those who understand the game hold back. They know that better to be feared than loved also involves not being predictable, and predictability is born from excessive talking. When you talk too much, people read you quickly. When you talk too little, they need to interpret, analyze, even speculate, and that puts you at an advantage. Furthermore, avoiding being hated also comes into play here. The more you talk, the more chance you have of making mistakes, of exposing yourself, of generating unnecessary conflict. Silence protects and at the same time exposes the other person. And when you start to perceive this clearly, you understand that it's not just about making the other person talk. It's about controlling who knows what. And this leads us directly to an even more strategic principle. He realized that, at its core, almost every power game revolves around one thing: who knows more and who reveals less. This is what they call information asymmetry, but in practice, it's simply an invisible advantage. Whoever possesses more data, more context, a better understanding of the situation, but doesn't reveal it, controls the pace of interaction. And this is completely aligned with what Machiavelli advocated: decisions based on real human nature. People don't cope well with uncertainty. When they don't know exactly what the other person thinks, wants, or knows, they become more cautious, more vulnerable to mistakes, and that's where the game changes. Silence isn't just a way of avoiding exposure, it's a way of accumulating power without others realizing it. Politics guided by reality, not ideals. It doesn't matter who seems smarter. What matters is who knows more than they show. Now imagine a real-life scenario, an important meeting, a negotiation, or even a delicate personal conversation. One side starts talking, explaining, justifying, giving context, while the other listens, just listens. Who do you think is gaining more advantage? Exactly, the one who listens. Because while one delivers information, the other collects it. And information, in this game, is currency. This is calculated use of force in practice. You don't need to impose anything, you just need to let the other person open up. Another simple example: someone asks you about your future plans. Most people answer in detail, but those who understand the game answer more generically, more strategically. They don't lie, but they also don't give everything away. This maintains room for maneuver. It maintains freedom. It maintains control. This is constant adaptability. You don't get stuck in a narrative that could be used against you later. And here's a point that few people dare to admit: revealing everything is comfortable, but dangerous, because the moment others know exactly where you are and where you're going, you become predictable, and predictability is weakness in any competitive environment. Machiavelli already pointed this out when talking about the importance of having your own loyal armies, not depending too much on what is outside your control. Information also works this way. The more you centralize, the more power you have. The more you distribute indiscriminately, the more vulnerable you become. And of course, there's that principle that bothers many people. The end justifies the means, including protecting your intentions until the right moment. It's not about deceiving, it's about not exposing yourself prematurely. And when you start operating this way, consciously, you realize something even more practical. It's not just about knowing more, it's about using that silence at the right moment, especially when there's something at stake. He realized that in negotiations, there's an unspoken rule that almost no one respects. Whoever speaks first usually loses power. It may seem counterintuitive at first, but that's exactly how the game works. When someone reveals too much about their position right away, they expose their limits, urgency, intentions, and without realizing it, have already given away half the advantage. Machiavelli, in analyzing conflicts and alliances, already made it clear that power lies in knowing when to act, not in acting all the time. This is politics guided by reality, not by ideals. There's no point in trying to be too transparent in an environment where the other side is playing strategically. Silence here is not passivity, it's pressure. It forces the other to move first, to show their cards, to take risks before you do. Now consider this in a simple example. Someone offers you a price for a service or product. Most people respond immediately, accept, refuse, or begin to negotiate. But those who understand the game do something different. They pause. They remain silent for a few seconds. It may seem like a small detail, but this space creates tension, and tension makes the other person act. Often the person who made the offer begins to justify, improve the offer, or reveal how far they can go. This is pure, calculated use of force. You did nothing, but you completely changed the dynamic. Another scenario: interviews, meetings, agreements. Those who talk too much try to convince. Those who talk less make the other person convince themselves. This is much more powerful. It's virtu and fortuna again, knowing how to use the right moment and let the environment work in your favor. And here's a difficult truth. Silence in negotiation requires composure, because the impulse to speak, to fill the space, to avoid awkwardness is strong. But whoever masters this discomfort gains a real advantage. Better to be feared than loved also connects here. Not in the literal sense of fear, but in the silent respect that arises when you are unpredictable. Those who don't know exactly how you will react treat you with more caution, and that changes everything. Furthermore, avoiding being hated also comes into play as a strategy. By speaking less, you reduce the risk of saying something that could be used against you or generate unnecessary conflict. In the end, negotiating isn't about speaking better. It's about better controlling time, information, and reaction. And when you begin to master this, you realize that silence not only gives you an advantage, it also builds something even more valuable: presence. He began to realize that there is a direct link between silence and authority, and it's no coincidence. The more someone talks, the more ordinary they become. The more someone explains themselves, the more accessible they seem. And curiously, the more accessible, the less respected they tend to be in competitive environments. Those who speak little create something rare nowadays: mystery. And mystery automatically sparks attention. People want to understand, decipher, discover. This generates a kind of silent respect that doesn't come from imposition, but from perception. Machiavelli already understood this. When working on the appearance of virtue, it's not necessary to expose everything to seem strong, intelligent, or capable. Often, what is left unsaid communicates more than any discourse. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals. In the real world, authority doesn't come from those who speak the loudest, but from those who are heard when they decide to speak. Now consider real-life situations. In a group, the person who comments on everything, gives their opinion on everything, and participates in every conversation ends up becoming predictable. On the other hand, the person who observes more speaks little. But when they do speak, delivers something relevant, that person naturally stands out. Not because they try to show off, but because they appear at the right moment. This is virtu and fortuna operating again. A clear example: great leaders, entrepreneurs, strategists, they aren't constantly publicly positioning themselves on every subject. They choose. And this choice creates weight. It creates expectation. When they speak, everyone pays attention. This is the calculated use of force applied to communication. It's not about quantity, it's about impact. And impact is born from scarcity. But the most interesting point is that mystery protects your position. When people don't know exactly what you think, want, or plan, they can't anticipate it. This reduces attacks, reduces resistance, and increases your room for maneuver. And here comes an essential principle: constant adaptability. Those who reveal too much become trapped in their own narrative. Those who remain silent maintain their freedom. Furthermore, avoiding being hated also fits perfectly. The less you unnecessarily expose yourself, the less friction you generate. Less judgment. Less wear and tear. Silence at this level is not just strategy, it's shielding. And when you start operating like this, something changes. You become observed more than you observe. And this opens up space for something even more powerful. Because while everyone is trying to be seen, few are truly seeing. He understood that those who talk too much miss the most valuable opportunity of all, to truly observe. Because while someone is busy trying to respond, impress, or position themselves, they simply aren't paying attention. And it's precisely in this detail that the game is decided. Silence creates mental space. It slows down automatic reactions and opens up space for real perception. Machiavelli always operated this way, observing patterns, behaviors, hidden intentions. This is decisions based on real human nature. It's not about what people say. It's about how they say it, when they say it, and what they avoid saying. And this is only perceived when you are quiet enough to notice. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals. The world is not interpreted by words, but by signs. Now think about this practically. In any environment, work, college, business, there are invisible layers happening all the time. Who is comfortable? Who is insecure? Who is trying to prove something? Who is hiding something? All of this appears, but not in words. It appears in the tone of voice, in the pauses, in body language, in contradictions. And only those who observe notice. A simple example: someone answers a question with excessive explanation. Usually this is not clarity. It's disguised insecurity. Another: someone avoids eye contact when talking about a certain subject. This may indicate discomfort or concealment. These signs are small, but accumulated, they become a real advantage. This is virtù and fortuna again, the ability to read the environment and use it at the right moment. While many are talking, you are understanding. And here's a point that completely transforms the game. Observing isn't just seeing, it's interpreting. And interpreting also requires inner silence, because it's no use being quiet on the outside and full of noise on the inside. Those who master this begin to perceive behavioral patterns easily. And when you understand patterns, you anticipate movements. This is calculated use of force at the most advanced level. You don't react to what happens, you position yourself before it happens. Furthermore, avoiding being hated also comes as a consequence. Those who observe more make fewer mistakes in interactions. They talk less nonsense, avoid unnecessary conflicts, and choose their battles better. Silence at this point becomes applied intelligence. And when you start to see the world this way, you realize something uncomfortable. Most people are too busy talking, and therefore increasingly weaker in the real game. He began to notice something curious. It has never been so easy to speak, and never has it been so difficult to have real power. The modern world has created a dangerous illusion that visibility is strength. Social networks, instant messages, constant opinions, everyone talks all the time. But in the real game, this doesn't strengthen, it weakens. Because the more you talk, the more predictable you become, more exposed, more vulnerable. Machiavelli would never operate like that. He understood that power lies in controlling what is revealed, not in spouting everything one thinks. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals. Current logic rewards those who are visible, but the strategic game rewards those who control. And these are completely different things. While many are concerned with being seen, few are concerned with being indecipherable. Now look at the standard behavior today. People share plans before executing them, opinions before reflecting on them, emotions before processing them. This creates a dangerous side effect, loss of authority, because those who talk too much about what they haven't yet built weaken their own image. Those who act silently and show results generate real impact. This is virtù and fortuna in practice, action well executed at the right time. A clear example, someone who constantly talks about projects, ideas and goals, but never delivers, and another who simply executes, shows results and talks little. Who do you take more seriously? Exactly, the second one, because they understood something essential. The end justifies the means, including saving energy and focus instead of wasting it on unnecessary exposure. And there's more. Excessive talking creates invisible wear and tear. The more you expose yourself, the more judgment you receive. The more misinterpretations arise, the more unnecessary conflicts appear. This goes completely against the principle of avoiding being hated. In this scenario, silence becomes an absurd competitive advantage. While everyone is fighting for attention, those who know when to be silent choose when to appear. This is constant adaptability, not reacting to the rhythm of the world, but imposing your own rhythm. Furthermore, silence preserves something rare today: depth. Those who speak less think more. Those who think more decide better. And those who decide better build an advantage over time. In the end, the problem isn't talking, it's talking without strategy. And when you begin to see this clearly, you realize that true power lies not in expressing yourself all the time, but in knowing exactly when not to express yourself. And this requires something that few truly develop. He understood that, in the end, it all comes down to control, and control begins with one's own tongue. Because speaking less isn't just an external strategy, it's a direct reflection of internal self-discipline. Those who can't control the impulse to speak can hardly control bigger decisions. That's why, throughout history, the most strategic have always demonstrated this characteristic: calmness, restraint, and precision. Machiavelli saw this as part of virtù, the ability to act intelligently in the face of reality, not impulsively. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals. It's not about being cold. It's about being conscious. Every word spoken unnecessarily is a small loss of control. And small losses accumulated become great weaknesses. Now think about this in everyday life. How many times does someone say something impulsively and then need to correct, justify, or even regret it? This happens because they lacked a simple filter, stopping and thinking before speaking. And this filter is trainable. A practical exercise: start observing your own conversations. Mentally ask yourself, does this need to be said now? Or does this add value or just expose something? It seems simple, but few people do it. Another example, in discussions, resist the urge to respond immediately. Breathe, pause, and only then decide if it's worth speaking. This is calculated use of force applied to behavior. It's not repression, it's direction. Furthermore, this type of control strengthens your presence, because those who speak little but clearly project an image of natural confidence. This connects directly with better to be feared than loved, in the sense of silent respect, not literal fear. And here comes the final point, and perhaps the most important one. Whoever controls their own communication begins to control their own life. Because communication isn't just what you say to others, it's also what you reinforce to yourself. When you speak less, you listen more. When you listen more, you understand more. And when you understand more, you make better decisions. This is about making decisions based on real human nature at a personal level. Furthermore, avoiding being hated becomes a natural consequence. Less impulsiveness, less conflict, more strategy. Silence ceases to be just a tool and becomes identity. Something you carry with you in any environment. And when that happens, you're no longer playing on the same level as the majority. You're operating consciously, intentionally, and with an advantage. And it's precisely at this point that everything connects, because whoever masters silence is ready for something greater. Now tell me honestly, how many times have you sabotaged yourself simply by talking too much? How many opportunities have you missed because you didn't know when to be silent? The truth is straightforward and perhaps a little uncomfortable. It's not the world that's against you. It's the way you play the game. Because as long as you keep reacting impulsively, explaining everything, trying to be understood all the time, you'll keep giving away an advantage for free. And advantage in the real game isn't given away, it's built. Machiavelli already made it clear, decisions based on real human nature, and human nature responds to mystery, control, precision, not excess. Now the question that really matters is, will you continue to be predictable, or will you start to be strategic? Will you continue to speak impulsively, or will you learn to use silence as a tool? Because this isn't theory, it's daily practice. It's in the next conversation, the next decision, the next moment of tension that you prove whether you understood or not. It starts simple. Speak less than necessary. Observe more than is comfortable. Think before you respond. And above all, stop revealing your cards prematurely. This is calculated use of force applied to your own life. This is constant adaptability. This is getting out of autopilot and starting to play the real game. And now I want to know from you, in what situation do you talk the most when you should stay silent? In arguments, negotiations, relationships? Comment here, because sometimes admitting this is already the first step to change. And if this type of content has opened your eyes in any way, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because here you don't just learn to think, you learn to play. And those who learn to play stop losing in silence.